name is T.C. Albert. I'm doing this video on how to carve your own French and Indian war horn. It's a powder horn that was commonly carried throughout the French and Indian war horn. They were often decorated with fine artwork and lettering and names and mottos and pictures of soldiers and Indians. Sky's the limit on a lot of these, but there is a basic theme that sets them apart from some of the other, like the Revolutionary War powder horns or some of the later era Tanzil powder horns. All you're going to need is a horn that you can carve on, powder horn. You can start with a raw one like this and make your own powder horn, or you can get a horn that's already made and carve on it. So make sure there's enough white on the body of the horn that gives you somewhere to carve. You're going to need a few carving knives, and you're going to need some resources, some books or some access to internet that'll show you what French and Indian war horns looked like. First thing you need to do is sharpen a knife. I just use a little detachable blade on an old carving knife, like you'd carve wood modeling with. It just tightens into a little knurled handle, a little bitty bit of a blade. I use a diamond stone. They're common. Diamond lap is what it's called, easy lap. And I work the blade just gently at a nice angle, like you'd normally sharpen a knife. Only difference is you need a back edge along the tip, so I actually sharpen the back side of the knife a little bit as well. Work it and work it until the knife will stick into a thumbnail. If it'll grab your thumbnail, then you know it's sharp enough to carve into a horn. I've already carved a design into the top here, Valentine, and I've only penciled the bottom, the last name Severe. I just use a regular mechanical pencil, number 2 soft lead. I draw in my lettering. I brace the horn onto a towel, sit at a table, and I just start to carve it in. It's easier to move the horn sometimes than the blade, or to wrap your hand around and make as long and hard a continuous cut as you can, trying to use the lines that you penciled as your guide. Once you've carved it, you can actually see where you've carved. There'll be a little raised indentation. And it looks awkward, and it is. But you want to hold on to that horn and hold on to the knife as hard as you can, and avoid skittering across the horn and leaving an unwanted knife cut. And believe me, with enough pressure, you could skid off clear to the side of the horn and leave yourself a mess that you have to clean up. I'm working in the S here, a decorative S for the first letter of the name Severe. Now, all this is just penciled in, so as I rub my thumb and my hand over this, I'm going to start to wipe this part of my drawing off. So I really don't want to handle that any more than I have to. And if I see it starting to rub off, I'll pencil that back in so I don't lose everything I've drawn as I go. Now there's a little man in the moon face on the bottom hook of this S. I'm going to try and carve that in right now. I just brace the horn and I drag my knife and feel it cut deep. Cut deep as I can. And I just work that in a little at a time. One little cut at a time. And I'm just doing the basic outlines right now. I'm not going to worry about shading anything. Make sure this piece has got a cut. And once you think you've got most of that letter in, you can wet your thumb or use a sponge or a wet rag and just wipe that pencil lead into that cut. And there you can see that's been cut in. Been totally cut in. Now I need the man in the moon to have his eye back. So I'm going to just draw the eye. I could just freehand cut it, but I'm afraid that I might freehand mess it right up too. So I always draw in what I'm about to carve. Just a little eyeball there. And you can see how his man in the moon is popping out. I don't know if I like that big of an open mouth. I'll just leave it like that. Maybe I'll put one little accentuation down the side of his cheek. I'll cut that in. And I'm happy with that man in the moon. Now, that letter S is good for a rough S. But remember, we sharpen the back side of this knife. The reason for that is so that I can come with the back of that knife and cut in all my shading lines. Now I'll shade by eye, and I'll just do little hash marks all the way around the side of my letter. And to accentuate the shade, you can make the hash marks longer, shorter, or finer. And what this is going to do is it'll make those letters pop. Just rub that in. A little more there. And if they don't pop enough, come back and cut those lines a little deeper, a little closer together. The closer they are, one little hash mark to the next, the more continuous that dark line will seem. And that's how I'll carve that S. Now we'll do another letter here. We'll do the E. We're going to get up close as much as we can. You see, I'll start at the tip, and I'll just drag that down as much as I can. And we'll turn the horn. Really push. Cut. I try to make all the lines going one way that I can before I'll move. Make it down, cut. Make it down, cut. Now we'll cut top of that. We'll cut the top of this. We'll cut the tongue of the E. We'll cut some of the side wall. If you're not sure if you cut the line or not, you can generally feel with the tip of your knife for a scratch mark. If you don't feel that mark, you probably didn't cut it. I'll carve the decorative down stroke, and we'll see what we got and what we forgot. You can see how the E is starting to work in. Now we'll clean that up, connect the lines properly, and I'll start to do some of that back scratching or hash mark with the back side of my engraving knife. You can see how that popped right on the back of the E. Do a little more shading across the top. Just more back scratch with the engraving stylus. Do some here.
We once looked at an engraved horn under a nice microscope, and we tried to study to see what the engraving medium actually was, what was being used to darken up those engraved lines, and we thought it was plumbago. Not inks, not India inks, nothing more than just plain old plumbago, which is equivalent to a pencil lead. And that's all I ever used to darken my engravings or scrimshaw. I draw it in with the lead, and there's enough lead on the surface of the horn that once you work it into that cut, it'll really highlight your work. I'm really afraid that if I were to India ink this, like some people tell you to do, that the India ink would stain the white of the horn black, not just the cuts. As a matter of fact, I know that happens because I've tried it and basically ruined an otherwise good carving job. Now I'm coming down the center with just fine little back hashes, and you can see how that line suddenly is a lot bigger, a lot better. So I have an S and an E. Now I can see that my work is being obscured here. I'm starting to rub off half of that V, and I don't want to do that because I kind of like the way it looks. I might not be able to do it twice, so I'm going to pencil that back in before I start carving it. And that's all there is to it. Slowly work your way across the horn. Keep your knife sharp. If you need to resharpen it, touch it up as you go. And be careful not to skitter off your lines or pull too hard so that that cut goes dragging through the rest of your horn. You can do a bad thing if you cut too hard and pull off. A little practice, a little time, and you'll be able to do all kinds of engraving work for projects on doing it yourself.